Hello, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to an artist talk with Stacey Tyrell. Tonight's event will be moderated by Allie Bradford, who is the cultural coordinator for the city of Orillia. Stacey Tyrell is the artist, and the exhibition is called Bacra Bluid. It runs at OMAH from May the 18th to September the 14th. Today and every day, we respectfully acknowledge that we are on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe and express our gratitude for the opportunity to live and work on and enjoy this land. Stacey, I am absolutely honored that you allowed me to curate this exhibition. I've been a fan of yours and I've been following you for about 25 years now. So I'm so excited to learn a bit more about you and a bit more about this exhibition tonight as well. So at this point, I'm going to turn you over to Allie. I will be here in the background to ask some more questions. When we wrap the question and answer or the question period with Allie, I have some questions as well if there's time. So take it away, Allie.
Great. Thank you, Tanya. Hello to all of our viewers. My name is Allie. I am the culture coordinator for the city of Orillia. Stacey, it's a pleasure to meet you. I'm so excited for this. In the essence of time, let's get right into it. I was hoping we could start off with a little bit of a background intro about yourself, Stacey, kind of where you're from, where did you go to school, how did you get into art, just kind of a Stacey 101, if you wouldn't mind to get us started.
All right, crash course in
Yeah.
So I was born in Etobicoke, Ontario, so a suburb of Toronto, and both of my parents are from this tiny island called Nevis in the Caribbean. So like a lot of first generation Canadians, the culture that I was brought up in really informed just I guess my way of thinking, and then eventually like the type of work that I've gone on to make. I went to the Ontario College of Art and Design. So it was OCA at the time, and I majored in photography. And for my thesis project, that's where things really began to kind of kick off in terms of developing a proper art practice. Because going to a place like OCAD, like you're not only like taught to see and make work, but then also how to discuss it and how to bring in these other elements, which is a lot different than let's say like a lot of self-taught artists. And that isn't that one is better than the other. It's just that it's a sort of different methodology in terms of sort of what you're bringing to your process. So that being said, I had started off making a series that was sort of based off of my mom's life before, when she was in England after being in the Caribbean and then coming over to Canada, and sort of this album of snapshots that she had brought with her. And with that series, I was lucky enough to have it selected as an emerging like student artist to be included in a show called Proof, which is put on every year by Gallery 44 in Toronto. And it's actually kind of crazy. Tomorrow is the 30th anniversary of that museum
Wow.
and that program. And I think I was a part of like Proof 4 or 5. So it's just amazing to see that that program is still around and that it's still encouraging photo-based artists, and especially like Canadian ones and ones from Ontario. It's just a wonderful, wonderful thing to be a part of. I'm just trying to think of if I've missed any points in your question. Like I sort of hit on those points, but then also I think you wanted to just know more about like how I even like arrived at art, or
Yeah, exactly.
okay.
How did you get into it?
Yeah, so I was always one of those kids that was always like pulling things apart and wanting to know how things worked. And I remember my father had this camera, and like from the time that like I was like really small, I could just remember him always taking pictures. And I think, and I still have the photo somewhere. One of the first pictures I took, I think it was about like 5 years old, and he had put the camera aside and I had snuck over, and I didn't know what I was doing, but I just like hit the button and then like ran away, and then I was so proud of myself when the film came back and actually saw this like blurry photo of like my aunt's legs or whatever was going on. I really should dig that up. But that, so and then I was always like rearranging my toys and trying to make scenes and all sorts of things that like at the time you don't realize that that's what this is leading to. Like, you're just one of those children that for whatever reason, like that's sort of like how you play, or the things that like you find um interesting. And I think it's really important to say that a lot of the time, like things like that get socialized out of us, whether it's through our parents or through the school system. Or it's like we have like things that happen in our lives that then you sort of put that down. But for whatever reason, I was lucky enough to be able to hang on to that. And so by the time that I got to high school, and like there were a lot of things that were happening in my personal life, having those sort of interests and those I guess like escapes, really, because it's like you always have to find the thing that when you're doing it, it's like you have no awareness of time. And that was one of them. And I just knew that this is something that I wanted to do. And then that's what actually led me to going to OCAD University.
That's amazing. I think of my own kids now, and I'm just like, the things that they get into and stuff, it's like, I wonder, is this
Yeah, and just let
right?
them go with it. You don't know where
Yeah,
it's going to go, right?
right.
You never know what's going to stick, right? Stick with
Yeah,
them.
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, so then that's fantastic. That's amazing. And then you go to OCAD, and then I'm of the other understanding that you're in the States right now. Is that correct?
Yeah, so for the past approximately 20 years, I've been living in New York City and Brooklyn. And like I was never one of those people that was like, okay, one of these days I'm gonna, leave Canada and Toronto and I'm gonna go live in New York City. What had happened was that when I graduated, I really still wanted to keep if I could help it, like working in what it was that I had just studied and what I was really passionate about and enjoyed. And like it was very true of the time then, and I don't know about now, because I know that Toronto has changed a lot and has developed a lot of things, but there really wasn't a lot of opportunity. And specifically because I had gone to a school or like a university where the emphasis was on the artistic process and creation and ideation and all of those types of things, as opposed to like just strictly technically teaching a subject, which then can make you a very good like camera operator or illustrator or all of those things. OCAD did sort of give a bit of that background, but they really put the emphasis on developing like the other part that I think is really important. And so what happened when I got out was that not that I was unhireable, but like just being told by people like, oh, if you'd gone to Ryerson or Humber College, like I think it would just be an easier
Mm.
thing to try to hire you. But because your process is different, or you didn't learn how to take like a beautiful picture of like a milk carton, let's say, or something
Yeah.
that like I'm just going to say this, it's sort of almost like you were just kind of a bit like less than.
Mm.
But I will never forget, I don't know if it's still around, and I think the place was called West Side Studios in oh my gosh, I can't remember what area, but it was like central Toronto. And sat down and had already gone through all of these rejections. And the one person that I met with, he was like, so who out of here in this studio are you interested in working with? And I told him it was like, I get a choice in that matter. And he said, absolutely, it's your career and your choice. And whatever it is that you want to learn in terms of style, or who do you think you would get the most out of, it's your journey and you have to map that journey.
Wow.
And that was really the first time where I was just presented with that option, because especially you already spent your time like going through school, and then you go to college right after, and it's like you're spending your time being told what to do or what you should do, and then you sort of are unleashed on the world, and then you're just sort of like, okay, so somehow now I'm supposed to chart my own course, but that's not how it's told to you.
Right.
And then to have somebody say, actually, you have that agency, like you can chart your own course, was sort of revelatory for someone who was, like, how old were we, Tanya, when we got out? Like 24 or something, like
22, I think, when we graduated.
yes, actually, yeah.
Maybe
And
yeah.
so you're like, wait a second, like out of all the things that you don't have a choice of in your life, I can actually choose something. And granted, I didn't end up working at that studio, and nobody actually chose me necessarily, but that stuck with me and sort of drove me to really think about, like, okay, like if I want to keep doing this, where do I need to go, or where do I need to try to be? And the opportunity, after I literally sent out like hundreds of emails and all these things at the time, got no response, and one person got back to me, and I met with that person. They were in New York City, and I'll never forget when he said, he goes, look, the whole key to having a career in this is you need an in. And he paused and he went, congratulations. Sorry, I get like choked up about this because I bump into him and I cry. Like, me and him started bawling. This was 20 years ago. I bumped into this man and I go, you actually told me, congratulations, you are now in. And every single thing that I have today, I owe to you telling me that.
I have shivers.
But it's one of those things where it's just like, maybe he told that to 20 other students.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, it's like that meant something to me, and it was enough for me to pack up everything and go with, like, I had like maybe like a couple thousand, like $2,000 in my bank account and my dreams, right? And I didn't know anybody. I didn't know anything. Like, I'm just like, he said I'm in. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna leave everybody that I know. I'm gonna, whatever. And that's how I ended up here. And I was lucky enough that one thing led to another, because also people will make these types of moves, and I don't condone, if something's not working, to keep sticking it out no matter what. But I was lucky. It was like one thing led to another, or I kind of grit my teeth and then kind of hung in there just a little bit longer. And I was lucky enough that it's worked out for me.
Wow.
Your story, like, of your perseverance and like your passion is just so inspiring. You reached out to so many people, you sent out hundreds of letters, no response, but like you just kept going. And I think that's really inspiring and admirable. I don't know if I could have stuck it out that long. So
Or maybe I'm just insane. Like, that's the other thing. Like, or maybe that's what it is.
well,
Be
no,
a little
clearly
delusional, guys.
not. Because look at you now.
Yes.
Yeah, all of it. No, just kidding.
Well, that's actually perfect to kind of move into the next question, which is, can you give us a little bit of background on the exhibit that's currently on display at OMAH, and what it's all about? How did you come up with it, and what inspired you to create it?
So there's a couple of things that kind of came together for where I arrived at that, this sort of method of working. So one of the first things was, I was like, oh, like, I've never done self-portraits before, and I know my schedule and I'm available, as opposed to relying on a subject or a location that might not work out. So there was that element. I think also I had always wanted to explore something to do with the themes of like heritage and colonialism, and how, like, when we all live in this part of the world, that we're all the result of people coming over, how whatever method that was, with the exception of, like, the native population that was already here. Um, we all somehow were either brought here or we came to this part of the world. And exactly what does that mean in terms of like genetics? And the fact that a lot of us are just like hybrids of all the different people that have sort of passed through here. And the fact that if you were to actually stop and look at someone's face that, like, you feel is completely different looking than you can actually begin to see a lot of similarities, and it all tells a story. And with this series and the work that's on display, it's also very cathartic for me, getting to sort of work my way also with these ideas of, perceptions about like race and identity, and whether that's my relationship with myself and how I feel that I'm viewed in the world as an African Canadian of Caribbean descent, or certain things that are imposed on me by, it's like all of these subconscious things that happen with human beings. And then also sort of dealing with the fact that, like, especially like when I was younger, that I always sort of bring up this example of, like those days where they'd be like, oh, let's celebrate everyone's heritage. Can everybody make a flag of where, your family's from? And, it was like I made the one where my parents are from, somebody else in Scotland. And I happened to say like, oh, my grandfather's actually half Scottish. And this little girl told me that I was lying. And and a part of that also has to do with the perceptions of and who at whatever particular time is accepted as being white and being black or being, of certain descent, and that only people that look like this can can be from these places. And super quick, Tanya, I don't know if you remember this or no, but what had happened. So we were in Italy, and Tanya's partner, who's Native Canadian, me and him were there with another classmate, and this Italian man came up to us, and he goes, "Where are you from?" And we were like, "Oh, we're all from Canada." And he pointed at the friend who was white of Croatian background. He goes, "You look like you're from Canada." He pointed at me. He goes, "You do not look like you're from Canada." And he pointed at Tanya's partner, who is Native Canadian, and said, no, he said, "You definitely are not from Canada."
Goodness, right?
And like we all just had a laugh about it, but it's one of those things like where it's like these perceptions of that people think of like who's from where, who belongs where, and I've already
based on
figured
how
the
you
story
look.
out. Exactly.
Simply based on how you look. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't remember that. That's really fascinating.
Yeah, it was pretty wild.
Yeah.
But yeah, so all of that is sort of like what is sort of it comes together at this way that I've decided to like create these like say like these characters that are not only like interpretations of sort of distant relatives that I feel are out there, but then also, it comes into play are my own prejudices and preconceptions of what it means to be white in a post-colonial society, because like that sort of like category, if you get placed within it, and it's always been very plastic in terms of who is considered that and who is not, and that's changed with every wave of immigrants that have come to like North America. So like it really wasn't that long ago when like people from Ireland or from Italy or from Poland or from wherever were not considered as part of that group, that specifically that could only be people from like Anglo-Saxon people from like England or like Scandinavia or something like that. Yeah, so it's all of that that's going on.
A lot's going on, yeah. Well, and I mean the work is incredible, stunning, and very provoking. I don't know if we can show some images, like it's really amazing. You're the model in all the photographs. Was that strategic? Like, did you choose to be the model yourself and be the subject matter because you weren't seeing what you felt like should be seen? Or like, how did you come to be like, I'm going to be the one representing this?
So the core of that idea, or the seed, was I had done one of these DNA tests, and this was way before 23andMe or any of these very easily available tests. And I was just curious, and I knew that maybe I want to do an art project related to this. So I sent away, got these results. All it came back was that someone somewhere that you're related to is a Black woman from Africa. So what I did, I contacted National Geographic because that's who had administered the test. And I told them that I know for a fact that I have people from all these other different places. And they had told me that at the time, the test they were doing is what they called like mitochondrial. So that can only track either like on the female, not on the female line, like patrilineally on the male line, so that there's certain things that are passed down that way. And so they were only able to give me a vague result for that on the female side because I'm female. And so from that, it just kind of got me really thinking and doing these tests and realizing that it's like in terms of my own, genetic makeup, like that also tells the story of the different groups that have come through parts of the world, like colonized. And And then, so I always knew that these portraits, I wanted to be like some sort of interpretation of that. And then by using myself, that made the most sense. But then where I took it a step further is that by visually removing one of the main indicators of not only my appearance, but also then what is the trigger as to what racial category people feel that I belong to, what else would sort of come through. And one of the most amazing things I think with the process of what it is that I've been doing is that by changing that one thing, by changing my skin color, the face changes dramatically. And what I'm doing in Photoshop is very minimal. The only thing I'm doing is thinning my nose ever so slightly because it's also part of the point of the picture. And the other thing that I do is I add the eye color of my roommate, who, even though she's of African American descent, like she has naturally green eyes. So it's easier to sort of bring those in because you get the depth that way. But by changing those two factors and then the hair, again, like it just completely changes the face. And you can start to see like the other things that are sort of going on in there.
Yeah. Well, and that's it. I mean, you look so different in each photograph. It's amazing. So can you talk kind of a little bit about the process involved? You said, you know, you use Photoshop a little bit, but like, are there any prosthetics involved? Like, it looks so different that like potentially you could be
No, like,
using
and
things like,
that's the whole point. So all I'm doing is changing my skin color through makeup and then applying like wigs.
Mhm.
And that's it, because I really just wanted where it's just my straight face. And then I always think like one of the ironies of say, especially with the hair, is that because hair can be a very like loaded visual subject in terms of colonization, but in this instance, I'm going and buying synthetic hair, which is a simulation of a very particular um, aesthetic and beauty standard, like a Eurocentric beauty standard within North American society. But the majority of the people that purchase these wigs are usually people of African descent. So
Mm.
to adhere in some way to that standard. And so then by also applying that hair, it sort of completes that picture. And not only that, but by even covering my hair, which was enacted through laws for hundreds of years. So like anytime that you see like a historic photograph or a painting of either like a slave or someone of African descent in the Western world, like their head is usually covered. And that's because there were laws outlawing Black women being able to show their hair in the first place. And whether, you know, there's everything from certain patterns being braided in the hair that were maps in terms of how to escape,
Oh my God.
to it just being very triggering in terms of it's so startlingly different, or it was also seen as being aesthetically ugly by Europeans. So just that it's sort of is echoing even that by like just I'm having to cover my own hair in order to then
Right.
sort of complete this transformation.
Wow. Powerful. And so what about like your facial expressions? You don't smile. Is that intentional?
Yes. So that is with that I'm sort of referencing like old paintings. Like I use a lot of that as visual reference material for what I'm doing, as well as like turn of the century photographs. I also wanted there to be this sort of unsettling quality to the images where it has a very judgmental gaze, which is something that I've often felt that I'm under by society in general, not necessarily a particular person. And also have that feeling of you know, there's a lot of like very old paintings that no matter what angle that you view it from, it looks like the person was looking at you.
Mhm. Yeah,
So it's like all of that was tied up in there.
that's
I have
amazing.
to say, Stacey, there is one that did not make it into this exhibition, and I've forgotten the name, but she is slightly smiling, and it's
Oh,
almost
right.
more unsettling than the ones that are unsmiling. Which is that one? Do you remember that?
Is that the one where the woman's in front of the door,
Yes, it is.
like a
Yes.
yellow door? Okay,
That
and part of
light
also what's
on.
going on, yeah, is that subconsciously, just like they talk about like the uncanny valley with like when it comes to like CGI and special effects, and that there's a certain amount of realness that has to happen in order for our human subconscious to like accept that visually that is human, and that's like a legacy of something very bad happening to our ancestors, that with something that looked kind of human that wasn't, that
Mhm.
then it's like our brains developed in a way where if something is slightly off, which there's a lot of things that are off with those pictures, everything from the skin is not translucent, so right away there's something subconsciously that you're not reading. The
Mhm.
hair is like, all of our hair is made up of like multicolors as opposed to like a solid color, and then even that expression and the stiffness and all of these things combined definitely are they're in something.
Yes, I agree. Yeah. And I also agree. I've had a lot we've toured quite a few kids groups through, and I talk about your exhibition, and they've all commented on the eyes, how they follow you as you walk through the
Yeah.
rooms. Kids pick up on that, the unsettling
mission
nature of that for sure.
mission accomplished.
Yes, done. Go ahead, Allie. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no, it's actually perfect because I was going to ask Stacey, what are you hoping viewers take away from the exhibit?
Yeah, so I think that there's something in what it is that I'm discussing that no matter like where you're from or what your interests are, that you can sort of glean something from it. That it's not necessarily like you have to be a person of color or whatever in order to sort of connect with the work. Like all of us have, it's like just genetically these stories, and we all think about our identity and where we fall in society and how we're viewed, and especially as women, like we're under certain like beauty standards and societal standards in terms of how we are to sort of act and behave. So I think that if I can just sort of provoke a little with what it is that I'm doing, and also make people sort of pause for a second and just sort of think like, oh, wait a second, like, it's like just people that I see around me like every day. There's a bit more going on, because I've definitely had people over the years that have just like written to me after maybe they've seen an image or like an article written, and they were like, I just really wanted to thank you, because like you sort of introduced me to thinking about something in a way that like I never really thought about before. So really, like that's the main takeaway.
That's amazing. Yeah, and I certainly get that as well. So thank you. Um, do you have any advice for aspiring artists?
Absolutely. One of the first things that I tell people, and it's like when I talk to classes, and it doesn't matter what age you are, don't make making money off of creating art contingent on the fact that you're going to keep making it.
Mhm.
And meaning, don't sacrifice this thing that you love or enjoy doing on the hire of making money, or that it conforms to whatever you think it should look like. And it just to always keep going. And it's like I make the work that I make, and I've always made the work that I make because I enjoy doing it. And it's just something that even if say like I wasn't able to have it in shows, I'd be making it anyway, because it's just what I want to do. It's what allows me to sort of, like I was saying before, like have that time where it's like there is no time almost when I'm involved in doing it. It's just like I could do that forever. And also just to I always tell people, like, try to make art about what you know. It doesn't mean that you have to be an expert on the subject, but if it's something that you're genuinely interested in and want to explore, or it's coming from like a personal place or personal experiences, and that could be your jumping off point, that those are great, great ways to sort of create work that is engaging you, and then also just to develop a practice, because really it's showing up. It's just like being an athlete. It might happen where you don't get to it to a bit, and you're going to be rusty, and you're going to have days where you're not happy at all with what it is that you make, but you just have to you got to keep going. Like I used to help this one curator and photography critic a long time ago, and she had told me that there were people, like world famous people, that she was dealing with where, there are some people that make something every day or every month they're producing images, and then there's some that they make stuff once every couple of years. And she goes, there's no right or wrong to it, and there's one is not better than the other. It's just, if that's your process, that's your process. And just to kind of, it's like sort of trust the process that feels good for you.
Love that. You should add a motivational speaker to your resi.
Yeah.
Well, do you have any other final thoughts?
I always like to also sort of show this. So in the top left, we have some people that through sort of searching through ancestry.com, I believe that this is my grandfather's grandfather, his family. And then you have my grandfather just down below there, and then another sort of great grandfather there. And on the right are members on my dad's side of my family. And I just like to kind of show that there are certain visual tropes that especially like 100 years ago, of where you would see people of color especially sort of dressed in like either like native costume, like what we felt it to be like native costumes, when really what you were having is somebody, usually European, sort of imposing what it is they felt a person from that region would look like. So I just always like to throw that up there to kind of show that it's like people were wearing Western clothes, like this is in the 30s and the 40s. Right. And so that's just sort of like some of the genetic breakdowns of, through doing some of these tests throughout the years. And, it's like some of the results have been like a little surprising to me, in particular, the fact that, and this again has to do with the different countries that came through and colonized. But, it's like I have relatives that actually are from like Sweden and Norway. And that was another country that people don't realize were very actively involved in colonialism in the Western world. And then I also, it just sort of in that theme of painting, I like to also look at different styles of painting. And here we can see something that's called pastis painting. And this was a style of painting that the Spanish had. And basically what they were depicting is the different combinations of people in terms of their genetic makeup. And the reason that they were doing this was because depending on what mixture they felt that you were, that dictated everything from how you dressed, what you got to eat, how much taxes you had to pay, what level of society that you got to be in, and sort of what rights you had under the law. So say, for instance, one of the key things with, keeping the institution of slavery going is that the rights of the mother were not inherited by the child. So if the father, usually say like this analogy is like a plantation owner who is a free person, that resulting child from that union does not inherit the freedom from the father. They inherit the slave status of the mother. And so here you can just see like this is sort of like a process shot. And again, like with just I'm using like a lot of foundation and makeup and reference photos. And then I do have someone help me. Like I set up all the lighting, I do all the makeup myself. I just have someone help me get to the spots that I can't reach. And like here are some of the results here. So in this instance, it's like these are sort of like Scottish like Highland dance costumes. So definitely like referencing very specific things that I know about my makeup. And then there's images like these where I guess really when you look at it, I'm like depicting a very particular type of like middle class or upper middle class like people that are like of Anglo-Saxon descent. What I love about this photo here is this is one of the ones that actually took the least amount of alteration, which I think is very startling compared to how I actually look. So really all I had done was slightly, and I mean proportionally shrunk the nose. Like I didn't narrow it, I didn't anything. And again, like I had said, I had placed the eye color over it And that those are really the main tweaks, because all of this is done through hair and makeup.
Mhm.
And the same goes for these images here. And then again, it's like depending on also like the context and sort of like what's dressed up in the background, like it can also sort of influence how you're viewing the subject.
Mhm.
And then just something to sort of add in there that just kind of came to mind is that like in terms of the titles for these images, I really tried to keep them as like documentary subjects. So you just have like a first name and an age, and that's it. So that then you can sort of draw your own conclusions or sort of project, I guess, like your own interpretation. Like to me, like all of these people sort of have like backstories that I kind of have in the background. So say like I always picture this woman as being like a really eccentric like professor of some sort of like obscure subject somewhere.
Actually, it's funny you would say that because I was going to ask you about that. So maybe we can talk about it. Like, how deep
This
do your backstories go? Like, and the
um
names are also quite unique. Like, where do the names come from? And then do you create intricate backstories for them?
so the names are all usually some variation of like Gaelic names.
Right? Yeah.
And so even like there's a lot of names that to us are just like everyday names that it's like Colleen literally means girl, or they usually mean beautiful, or
Yes.
whatever is going on there. And then so say like this this subject, I had named her Boudica, which is I believe she was like the first ruler of what is now known as Britain. And she was sort of like this warrior leader. And she is who they modeled Britannia after. And but a lot of those like the iconography of the embodied, like women being the embodiment of nationhood, a lot of those they tend to also only reference say like like just like a Greek and Roman mythology. So it's always like a goddess of wisdom, something like that. So like I thought that like with this subject here that name really resonated.
So I was recently listening to an interview with the actress and comedian Kristen Wiig, and she admitted to getting a lot of her material simply by observing the world around her. So I have to ask, you live in Brooklyn, New York, you've worked at Christie's Auction House, and you worked for Martha Stewart Living, correct? I
Yes.
would imagine that you have met some extremely interesting people. So do you find yourself mining your environment for inspiration for these photographs?
100%. So especially at the time that I had created this series was part of the 10 years that I was working at Martha Stewart. So I was like helping to oversee the photo studios there. So that was wonderful because I had access to like a space and like equipment that I could use on the weekends. But then sort of observationally, just being able to, it's like observe people, usually from arm's length, that are part of like a demographic that like that's another planet to me, like this very uh, not like yes, there were like affluent people, but also just in terms of like mannerisms and how they held themselves, or how like definitely there's a lot of self-importance to what it is that they felt that they were trying to portray to the world. And but yeah, and I think like as an artist, it's like there's things that we just sort of pick up on instinctually that you might not know exactly how you're going to use it, but you just sort of park it there in the memory bank, and you
Yeah.
can just sort of like bring it forward. So that I definitely agree with that statement that she made.
The eccentric characters.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and finally, this might be even more of a comment, but I truly admire artists who work with identity. I think I came a bit later to it. I think it wasn't until I turned into a mom that I really started to question, who am I? Why am I here? And I wanted to commend you for finding it so early, because you were just saying you started on your final year at OCAD is when you really honed in on that series about your mom. So I just find it fascinating that you found yourself so young and that you've been able to grow with something that is so important. And like you said, advice to young artists, if it's identity is all about yourself, and it can never be wrong. It comes from a true place, right? So I think that's just a very important note to make, that it's an important topic in life and in art.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, right? 25 years I've been following you.
Been following each other.
It's true. It's true. Mutual admiration for
Yeah.
sure. Allie, Bradford, I just want to thank you for doing an excellent job moderating this talk. Stacey, Tyrell, an artist that I admire so much. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I am Tanya Cunnington, and I am the proud curator of Backward Bluid, running at OMAH from May 18th to September 14th, 2024. Thank you, ladies, for joining us today.